Welcome to Auto News Talk. I want you to imagine, just for a second, paying almost $3,000 just for the privilege of a dealership physically receiving the exact truck you're trying to buy from them.
Yeah, it's a lot to swallow.
Right. I mean, no upgrades, no extended warranties, just the sheer, the logistical cost of moving a metal box from a factory to a parking lot. It is wild to think about.
It really is.
Because usually, when we picture the auto world, we picture the shiny sheet metal, the horsepower, driving down the open road. It's a very physical, highly visible experience. But beneath that surface, the entire industry is currently being squeezed by these intense, almost completely invisible pressures.
Exactly. And, that is exactly the terrain we're mapping out for you on this segment. We aren't just looking at a scattered list of industry updates. We are tracking the complete journey of the modern vehicle.
From start to finish.
Right. From the moment it's just like a digital concept in a lab all the way to the actual fuel you put in its tank on your driveway. We're going to explore how automakers are engineering these vehicles on a total shoestring budget using some mind-bending tech.
Oh, the virtual stuff, yeah.
Yep. And how cars are shipped at a massive premium, how dealership inventory is being fiercely regulated on the digital lot. And this is a big one, how a seemingly simple fuel waiver at the gas pump is hiding some very complex math for the driver.
And what becomes incredibly clear when you look at all these moving parts is this massive structural shift in who actually bears the costs in the auto industry. Spoiler alert, it's you.
It usually is.
Yeah. So let's unpack this. Let's start with the physical reality of how a vehicle actually gets to the lot. Because long before you even have a chance to, kick the tires or smell that new car scent, you are hit with a massive, unavoidable logistical premium.
It really is the ultimate hidden friction. There's this extensive breakdown on destination pricing that reveals a pretty stark reality. Automakers are aggressively pushing their rising logistical costs and just general market costs directly onto buyers.
Just passing the buck.
Totally. Through these skyrocketing, non-negotiable destination fees. If you look closely at the data in that report, manufacturers, specifically Ford and GM, have dramatically hiked these fees. And they're really targeting their highly profitable full-size pickups and SUVs.
And just to pause here and be absolutely clear for anyone who maybe hasn't stepped onto a dealership lot in a while, this isn't some arbitrary dealer markup, right? Like, you can't just haggle this away over a cup of bad coffee in the finance office.
No, not at all. It is entirely mandatory. It's printed right there on the factory window sticker. It's completely separate from the base MSRP. And the automakers, they defend this by claiming they calculate a uniform national average. The stated logic is that they basically pool all the shipping costs together so that every single customer pays the exact same flat rate.
Supposedly to keep it fair.
Right, to cover the fuel, the specialized transport labor, and just the incredibly complex logistics of moving thousands of vehicles across the country.
Wait, a uniform national average? I mean, that makes zero sense in practice. If I live in Michigan, let's say like 3 miles down the road from the assembly plant, I am essentially subsidizing the massive train and truck shipping costs for a guy buying the exact same vehicle in California.
That is precisely the mathematical reality of a national average.
Yeah.
You are paying for a share of everyone's shipping.
Wow.
And what's genuinely fascinating is just how rapidly these baseline fees have inflated. The pricing analysis notes that destination charges have jumped by up to 48% over the past few years.
48%.
Yeah, almost half again as much. And it relies really heavily on the physical footprint of the vehicle. There's this great, very specific contrast highlighted in the breakdown. A massive, heavy Cadillac Escalade now demands a staggering $2,895 fee.
Oh my God.
Right? Meanwhile, a smaller, lighter Lincoln Corsair sits at just $1,495.
So that's nearly $3,000 just to get the Escalade to the showroom floor. I mean, it's the automotive equivalent of buying concert tickets online and getting hit with that convenience fee that is almost as expensive as the ticket itself.
That's a perfect way to put it.
You are paying a massive premium just for the vehicle to exist in your vicinity.
Right.
Which, it entirely eliminates a huge portion of your negotiation power right out of the gate. You're starting $3,000 in the hole.
Exactly. It creates a much higher, completely non-negotiable floor for your out-the-door price. But there is a frustrating gray area here. Well, if you're a buyer trying to actually plan your budget, the pricing data leaves one major question open. What this doesn't answer is exactly when these updated fees go into effect.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the automakers didn't specify an exact hard launch date on their online configurators for when these newly hiked fees officially kick in across every single model.
Yeah.
So you just have to be hypervigilant and check the fine print on the specific sticker of the car you were looking at.
Right. Okay. So you swallow that massive shipping fee. The logistics of moving the physical car are incredibly precise, incredibly expensive, and you foot the bill.
Right.
But here is where the situation gets deeply ironic to me. When you go online to actually track down that specific truck you want, the truck is often a complete ghost.
Oh, the phantom inventory.
Yes. The physical logistics are a well-oiled machine, but the digital lot is an absolute mess.
And the federal government has completely lost its patience with that mess.
Right.
Yeah, an FTC enforcement breakdown shows that the agency is actively putting dealerships on notice. They're targeting dealers for leaving already sold vehicles listed as available on their websites.
Because it's basically lying.
Exactly. The FTC is no longer treating this as just some harmless lag in the software. They are actively classifying it as a deceptive bait-and-switch tactic.
Because, I mean, we've all been there. You scour the internet, you find the exact trim and color you want, you literally take your Saturday to drive all the way across town to the lot, and surprise, it's been sold. But hey, while you're here, look at this other, slightly more expensive model we have right over here.
It happens all the time. It purposely drives foot traffic under false pretenses. The regulatory breakdown confirms that the agency sent formal, sweeping warning letters to 97 different dealership groups.
97. That's a huge sweep.
It is. Because for a long time, the industry standard for these multi-million-dollar businesses has been to use these infrequent, clunky batch syncs.
Batch syncs.
Yeah, basically their internal inventory software might only talk to their public website once a day, usually overnight.
I just have to express some complete disbelief at dealership technology here. Batch syncing. That sounds like relying on dial-up internet in an era of gigabit fiber optics. Why are businesses that generate tens of millions of dollars still relying on software architecture that updates that slowly?
Well, it almost always comes down to deeply entrenched, fragmented legacy systems. You have the dealership's internal accounting software, the consumer-facing website platform, and then, the third-party car shopping feeds, and they're all trying to communicate through different APIs.
Sound like a nightmare to fix.
It's expensive to fix. But the FTC is completely changing the math. The cost of not modernizing is about to far outweigh the cost of upgrading, because the enforcement documentation highlights a jaw-dropping penalty. Dealerships face potential fines of up to $50,000 per single violation.
Wait, per violation?
Per violation.
Meaning every single car they leave online after it rolls off the physical lot could cost them 50 grand.
That is the direct implication. Yeah. The FTC is attempting to force this massive industry-wide shift to real-time digital inventory updates.
Wow.
Dealerships are having to fundamentally restructure their digital workflows. They have to assign clear human ownership for listing accuracy and automate their data feeds just to maintain basic consumer trust, and more importantly for them, dodge these ruinous fines.
But realistically, how fast is fast enough? Like, if a guy signs the paperwork for a truck at 2:00 p.m., does the car have to be off the website by 2:01 p.m.?
Well, that is the multi-million-dollar open question. Because what this doesn't answer is how the FTC actually defines timely. The enforcement guidelines don't provide a strict minute-by-minute definition of what a timely removal is. They haven't given a set hour-by-hour deadline.
So it's just open to interpretation.
Exactly. It implies a case-by-case judgment, which honestly makes that $50,000 threat even more terrifying for the dealers. They're operating in fear of a totally undefined boundary.
Okay, so the dealerships are feeling this massive regulatory pressure to modernize their tech immediately, basically just to avoid bankruptcy by fines.
Right.
But while the dealers are scrambling on the sales side, the automakers themselves are looking way further upstream. They are leaning into incredibly advanced technology at the very inception of the car, trying to slash physical waste during the engineering process.
Which brings us to a really fascinating case study. It involves the relaunch of the Chevy Bolt EV. According to a detailed engineering report on the vehicle's development, GM largely bypassed traditional physical destruction.
No smashing cars into walls.
Mostly no. They utilize highly advanced virtual crash simulations to fast-track the entire project.
I actually love the context behind this part because they were moving the Bolt's assembly plant to Kansas, right?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Which meant the engineers didn't have access to a steady stream of physical prototype bodies. Like, they couldn't just pull a chassis off the line to smash into a barrier. They were basically hoarding parts.
Exactly. When you move a production line, The physical resources just dry up instantly. And building a physical crash test prototype by hand, that takes weeks of labor and hundreds of thousands of dollars per car.
So what do they do?
To navigate those tight constraints, the engineering teams built incredibly comprehensive, three-dimensional digital models. And what is vital to understand is that these weren't just like visual wireframes that look pretty in a PowerPoint presentation.
Right, it's not a video game.
Far from it. They programmed in the accurate molecular material properties for every single piece of plastic, aluminum, and high-strength steel.
It makes me think of Neo in The Matrix.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're running millions of virtual combat simulations, tweaking the variables at lightning speed, adjusting a weld here, changing a bracket thickness by a millimeter there, altering the impact angle before they ever have to throw a real-world punch, or in this case, crash a real-world car.
That is a brilliant analogy. And the engineering breakdown specifies that instead of focusing on, like, photorealistic rendering, they focused purely on the raw quantitative physics.
The math.
Exactly. They mapped the exact mathematical forces transferring through the structural pillars, the energy absorption of the crumple zones, and the precise G-forces hitting the virtual crash test dummies.
Incredible.
And by relying on this hyper-accurate math, the engineers estimate they saved roughly 24 pre-production vehicles from being completely destroyed in a laboratory.
Saving 24 physical prototypes from the crusher. I mean, the implication of that is massive. It means a mostly virtual engineering route isn't just some backup plan. It is faster, it is infinitely cheaper, and it is vastly more flexible.
He really is a paradigm shift.
It signals a complete shift in how future vehicles are going to be put through homologation.
Homologation being, of course, the crucial official regulatory certification process to prove a vehicle is safe and street legal.
Right, and if they can do all that in a computer, it changes the entire timeline of bringing a car to market.
It allows them to relentlessly test edge cases. You know, weird angles, specific offset impacts, things that would be far too expensive to recreate physically dozens of times. However, there is a hard boundary here.
Which is?
Well, what this engineering data doesn't resolve is whether virtual testing can ever completely eradicate the physical crash test. Because as advanced as the digital physics are, current safety regulations still mandate at least one final real-world physical crash test to pass that homologation.
Just to prove the computer's math was actually correct.
Exactly. You still have to break at least one real toy.
Okay, so you still need that one final dramatic smash into the wall. Let's step back and look at the vehicle's journey so far.
Okay.
It's engineered efficiently using flawless digital physics. Then it's shipped across the country at a massive premium that is completely footed by the buyer. It's advertised strictly to avoid severe federal fines.
Yep.
But once you finally get the keys, you drive it off a lot and you need to fill it up. A brand new cost-benefit battle begins right at the gas pump.
And this introduces a very complex, highly relevant fueling dilemma. We're looking at a temporary government waiver that allows the broader sale of E15 fuel.
Right, the ethanol blend.
Yeah. And the core takeaway from the EPA's fuel waiver guidance is that while this policy promises cheaper gas at the pump on the surface, it effectively shifts a really heavy burden of vehicle compatibility and efficiency loss directly onto you, the driver.
Okay, let's break down the chemistry and the actual policy here, because I think a lot of people just look for the cheapest number on the big neon sign and start pumping. What exactly is happening with E15?
So the EPA is temporarily relaxing stringent seasonal smog regulations for a short 20-day window.
Just 20 days.
Right. The stated goal is to bolster the national fuel supply during a declared energy emergency. Now, when you pull up to the pump, you won't necessarily see it called E15 in giant letters.
What's it called?
It is commonly labeled as unleaded 88.
Ah, okay.
And that fuel contains 15% ethanol compared to the standard 10% blend we usually run in our cars.
And the immediate pitch to the consumer is purely financial, right? It's just cheaper.
Right. It typically runs roughly a quarter less per gallon at many stations. Ethanol has a naturally high octane rating, which helps the refiners meet performance targets while using cheaper, lower quality base gasoline.
Okay, makes sense so far.
But here is the critical catch, and it all comes down to energy density.
Okay.
Because ethanol contains oxygen, it physically possesses less sheer combustible energy per gallon than pure gasoline.
Interesting.
So to get the same amount of power, your engine just has to burn more of it. Using E15 automatically lowers your overall fuel economy by about 1.5 to 2%.
Oh, wow. And it isn't just a matter of losing a few miles per gallon, though. It's a matter of potentially destroying certain engines, right?
Exactly. The situation is serious enough that dealerships are being instructed to proactively coach their service advisors to warn drivers. Yes, if you own a vehicle that is over 2 decades old, or if you are filling up small carbureted engines like your lawnmower, your chainsaw, or an outboard boat motor, using E15 risks serious material degradation.
It eats the parts.
Yeah, it can eat away at older rubber seals and cause major drivability issues.
So what does this actually mean for, say, someone hooking up a trailer for a weekend road trip?
Well, it means you're forced to do some very complex mental math while holding the fuel nozzle. Consumers might see that cheaper price up front and feel like they are winning, but they have to figure out if the miles per gallon loss completely erases the savings.
And does it?
Well, the fuel waiver documentation points out a very memorable specific scenario. If a driver is operating under a high-load condition, such as towing a heavy boat or doing steep mountain driving, that fuel economy drop can actually spike to 4%.
4%. I have to call out the false economy trap here. Think about the irony of this.
It's pretty glaring.
You are saving maybe 25 cents a gallon at the pump, but you are burning that fuel 4% faster while you tow a trailer with the exact same truck you just paid a $3,000 destination fee to acquire.
Yep.
The math feels like a complete trap for the consumer.
It absolutely puts the onus entirely on you to calculate your real-world cost per mile. And the guidance leaves us with a glaring open question regarding the timeline, too.
What's that?
Well, what this doesn't answer is what happens if the underlying national energy emergency persists past this short 20-day window.
Oh, right.
The waiver is temporary, sure.
Yeah.
But if the supply issues remain, will the government just keep extending it indefinitely, making this complex, risky mental exercise a permanent reality for drivers?
It is exhausting just thinking about having to calculate energy density while I'm trying to buy a snack at the gas station.
It's a lot to ask of the average driver.
It really is. So when we take a step back and look at all of these seemingly disparate pieces, from the digital engineering labs to the physical shipping routes to the dealership websites, and finally the gas pump, what are the overarching themes tying this all together?
When you lay it all out, there are incredibly strong patterns. First and foremost is the relentless cost shifting to the consumer.
Yeah, that's undeniably clear.
We see it clearly with the automakers masking their rising logistics costs behind those non-negotiable destination fees from the pricing report. And we see it again with the EPA's E15 waiver. The government eases supply constraints, but they pass the buck on fuel efficiency losses and engine compatibility risks directly to the driver.
In both cases, the burden moves away from the massive entity and lands squarely on the individual.
Exactly. It's optimization for them and an added expense for us. Another huge theme is the profound demand for digital accuracy.
How so?
Well, dealerships are facing existential threats from the FTC to maintain perfectly accurate digital inventory, essentially forcing them to let their virtual showrooms dictate their physical operations.
Right, the $50,000 fines.
Exactly. Meanwhile, an automaker like GM, as we saw in the engineering breakdown, is relying on perfectly accurate digital physics to dictate how physical steel bends.
The auto industry is becoming a software industry that just happens to produce metal boxes.
That's a great way to summarize it.
Yeah.
And finally, you see regulation driving immediate, drastic behavior. The FTC warning letters are forcing multi-million-dollar software upgrades overnight, while the EPA waivers are forcing dealerships to rapidly educate totally confused drivers.
And what strikes me maybe the most fascinating part of this whole journey are the massive contradictions at play. There is an undeniable cost paradox happening right in front of us.
Oh, absolutely.
You have automakers justifying exorbitant destination fees by citing market conditions and logistics costs, charging a buyer $3,000 just to put a truck on a train. Yet, simultaneously, those same automakers are utilizing virtual crash tests to save themselves millions of dollars in physical prototype waste. They are achieving this hyper-efficiency on the back end, but continuing to squeeze the buyer on the front end.
It is a brilliant observation. And you see a very similar contradiction in the regulatory environment. It is completely fragmented.
Yeah.
You have the EPA relaxing its grip, allowing more volatile, less efficient summer fuel to flow freely to the pumps to ease market pressure.
Yeah.
But at the exact same time, you have the FTC drastically tightening its grip on the market, threatening dealers with ruinous fines for a delayed website update.
The rules of the game are changing entirely depending on where you look.
Exactly.
So when all the dust settles, what is the practical, everyday takeaway for the person listening to this who just needs to buy a car and drive it to work?
The ultimate takeaway is that the surface level is no longer sufficient. The modern automotive landscape demands hypervigilance. You just cannot take a sticker price, a website listing, or a gas pump label at face value anymore.
You have to do your homework.
You have to read the fine print on absolutely everything. Check the destination fee on the sticker. Verify if a car online is actually on the physical lot before you drive there. Decipher if the cheaper unleaded 88 is going to cost you more in lost mileage. You have to understand the hidden mechanics beneath the transaction.
From advanced virtual crashes saving corporations millions to invisible destination fees costing you thousands, the entire auto industry is optimizing every single penny they can. You have to make sure you're doing the exact same thing.
Exactly. Understanding these hidden pressures is really your only defense.
Well, it certainly changes how you look at a window sticker. Which brings up a final, slightly provocative thought to chew on. With physical logistics costing thousands and dealerships struggling to even keep their websites legally accurate under this FTC pressure, you kind of have to wonder how long until the traditional dealership model collapses under its own weight.
That's a very fair question.
If direct-to-consumer models eventually completely bypass the lot, maybe one day both the destination fees and the FTC inventory fines will be entirely obsolete. Just something to keep in mind as the market evolves.
Definitely something to watch.
Well, that wraps up this segment of Auto News Talk. As a quick next step for everyone listening, keep an eye on the online dealer listings in your local area. With that massive FTC warning floating around out there, you might just notice those virtual showrooms getting a lot more accurate in the coming weeks. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.